So I remember many years ago when I was starting out my business and I was taking things to a real professional level, I wanted to use some high-end intuitive software. I knew there would be a learning curve, and so I did a lot of research as to which platforms to use. And now that I've been doing banquet hall photography and videography for many years, I'm a drone pilot, I edit a lot of drone footage, I do corporate and doctor office video tours, I obviously create a lot of YouTube content, and if you look at my Instagram, although recently it's mostly reels, I do edit them at times using the professional softwares. And I've tried a whole lot of them because I'm very, very interested in how these softwares are evolving. And I actually really love the fact that there's two flagship products that are really at the top echelon of professional video editing softwares. And that is Adobe Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro from Apple. And I think it's really, really healthy and great that they keep innovating and that they keep each other on their toes. So none of them could just slack off and rest on their success because the other one is continuously developing new features, new AI, and competition, it drives innovation. And so I'm really thankful to both of these platforms. Now, of course, there are runner-up platforms like DaVinci. However, like I said, there's a learning curve to learning different softwares like this. And so you have to be wise about your time. Me personally, I would highly recommend that you only stick to Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro, because while the other ones may succeed and may at some point get to the same level as the two I just mentioned, they are not there yet, and the support isn't there for it yet, and they're not as versatile, and they're still quite glitchy and not really fast rendering times. So the first thing that I want to mention is, if you are a Mac user, definitely stick to Final Cut Pro. Why? Well, Apple creates all of the Mac operating systems, and obviously Apple is also behind Final Cut Pro. And so the powerful video editing features and amazingly fast rendering that Final Cut Pro has is also going to be adapted regardless to which way Apple takes the hardware of a lot of their Mac operating system products. So for instance, if they start evolving the M1 chips to be something else, you better bet that Final Cut Pro will be adapted to it. And remember, Final Cut Pro, it is just one-time fee, whereas Adobe Premiere, it's actually a monthly subscription, and you're gonna end up paying more than Final Cut Pro. But in my personal opinion, if you are a PC user, it is a no-brainer to go with the Adobe product. And especially if you're going to integrate Photoshop, Adobe Effects, then you have to go with Adobe Premiere Pro. I personally have used Final Cut Pro and also Adobe Premiere Pro, and I've also tooled around with DaVinci and stuff because I'm curious at the AI and how intuitive some of these other softwares are, but they're not quite there yet. They're definitely quite glitchy. And again, there's a learning curve to all of these platforms. You have to be wise about the time you invest into it. So make sure whichever platform you're going to jump into, you're going to learn everything you can about it. You're going to get comfortable with it, and you're going to be continuously using it. Remember, this video is for the professional person looking for video editing software that's just starting out. And by the way, I really like Adobe Premiere Pro because they have something called Adobe Premiere Elements, which is a much simpler version of Adobe Premiere Pro, where you can actually master that platform and you could take some of those skills and some of that interface and apply that knowledge to Adobe Premiere Pro. So I personally, most of the time, I'm a PC person, so I use Adobe Premiere Pro, and I do most of my video editing in it, and I feel like over the years, it's gotten so less glitchy, it never crashes on me, even though when I try Final Cut Pro, and I've talked to a lot of my colleagues before making this video, everyone agrees that both Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere are at the forefront of what these video editing softwares can do, and they're getting quicker rendering times, and it obviously still depends on the specs of your machine. But I'm saying all this because I want to give a helpful video. There's a lot of fluff in these other videos where they show their resumes and they show all this footage they did and they interview different people. I'm telling you, keep it simple. If you're an Apple user, just use Final Cut Pro. Learn it extensively. Keep watching all the YouTube videos you can. Keep reading about it. Keep trying new things. You're going to be a professional at it before you know it. And if you are a PC person, go with Adobe Premiere Pro. And if you need a little bit of a simpler program at first, then go ahead and use Adobe Premiere Elements. Now, Adobe Premiere Pro, it's going to be a little more expensive than Final Cut Pro because it's on a monthly basis. And over time, you will be paying more than you would have for just Final Cut Pro. But in my personal opinion, I think that it's well worth it. Now remember, I'm not putting an ad in the middle of this video. I have no affiliate links. I just wanted to give you my take because I get this question asked a lot now that my Instagram has blown up, now that I do a lot of YouTube stuff. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends, they ask me all the time which editing software I use, which camera I use. If you're curious, I use the A7 III to shoot a lot. Mirrorless is the way to go for me when I'm doing photography, videography, especially because I do it on the nighttime scene. I've used the Nikon, I've used the Canon before as well. I use a cell phone sometimes, the Samsung Galaxy, but I do all of my editing in Adobe Premiere Pro these days. I absolutely love it. I hope that both Adobe and Apple, I hope the competition keeps driving innovation. And I also do hope that Core and DaVinci, they will at some point catch up so that we can have real competition, keep everyone on their toes so that everyone keeps innovating, because competition is a beautiful thing. If it was just Adobe Premiere Pro and there was no one else sneaking up on them or neck and neck with them, they may very well just rest on their laurels, or they may start charging a lot of money to use it. But these are still very affordable products, because when I think about the amount of money I make a month or a year from video and photography and multimedia as a web developer or a nighttime photographer, it eclipses, regardless if I was going to pay the $300 for Final Cut Pro or the $40 that I pay for Adobe Photoshop and Premiere Pro a month. It really does eclipse that. So keep that in mind. If at the beginning it seems like it's a lot of money, you have to realize that if you get proficient at these programs, there's so much demand for it these days. The fact that social media is through the roof, the fact that websites are still a thing, still everyone needs portrait photography, headshots, everyone, when they're having engagements, weddings, photography is needed, videography is needed. Everyone loves to tell a story through these multimedia. And so I appreciate you guys watching this video in its entirety. Let me know in the comment section if you disagree about something I said. If you think that one of the other up and coming platforms is getting close to Adobe Premiere Pro or Final Cut, I would love to hear from you about it. Let me know which topic you wish for me to cover next, and I will see you all in the next video.